My aunt ruined my son's birthday cake with pig slop for laughs. My parents shared it on social media. My son Owen turned 6 last spring, and I wanted nothing more than to give him a day he could hold on to, a memory that wasn't tainted by the mess of our lives. Being a single mom in Roseville, California, isn't glamorous. I'm Sarah Bennett, 32, and I work as an accountant at a small construction firm downtown, hunched over spreadsheets in a cramped office with flickering fluorescent lights and a coffee maker that's always broken. My desk is cluttered with sticky notes and a framed photo of Owen in his Pikachu hoodie, grinning at a pumpkin patch last fall. That smile keeps me going. Owen loves Pokemon, Pikachu especially, and he'd been talking about his birthday for weeks, sketching Pikachu on every scrap of paper he could find. I rented the party room at the Roseville Community Center, a squat brick building off Vernon Street with scuffed linoleum floors and folding tables that wobble if you lean too hard. It cost me $150 for the day, which stung, but I budgeted for it. I spent $30 at Safeway on ingredients, flour, sugar, yellow food coloring, fondant, and stayed up past midnight shaping a Pikachu cake, my hands sticky with icing as I carved out pointy ears and red cheeks. It wasn't perfect, but it was for Owen. I spent another $200 on pizza, soda, and Pokemon balloons, plus $50 for a banner and paper plates with Pikachu's face. $400 total, a stretch for my $65,000 salary, but worth it to see Owen's eyes light up. The party started well. 10 kids from Owen's kindergarten class ran around, their sneakers squeaking on the floor while a few relatives milled about, sipping lemonade. My parents, Margaret and Robert Foster, showed up early, which should have been a red flag. They live in a split-level house in Sacramento, the kind with faded curtains and a fridge always stocked with Coors Light. Mom's got a habit of twisting her pearl necklace when she's judging someone, and Dad's always scrolling his phone, half listening. They've never thought much of my parenting, always hinting I'm too soft on Owen. Then my Aunt Diane Foster arrived, an hour late, strutting in with a glossy white box from a Torres bakery in Sacramento. Diane's 45, my mom's older sister, and she's built her whole personality around being the one who made it. She runs a boutique in Midtown Sacramento selling overpriced candles and scarves, but I've heard whispers she's drowning in debt. She's tall, with sharp cheekbones and a laugh that cuts through a room, but there's a brittleness to her, like she's one bad day from unraveling. I think she resents me, maybe because I don't fawn over her like Mom does, or because I'm raising Owen alone and still standing. She set the box next to my cake and smirked. I brought a real cake, Sarah. Nobody wants that lumpy thing you slapped together. Mom laughed, twisting her necklace. Oh, Diane, you're too much. Sarah's cake is sweet, but it's so homemade. Dad chuckled, not looking up from his phone. I should have said something, but Owen was tugging at my sleeve, begging to see the fancy cake. He trusted Diane, thought her loud voice and shiny bracelets meant she was fun. When she opened the box, the cake looked stunning, green frosting, smooth as glass, with candles already lit. But when she cut a slice and handed it to Owen, I caught a whiff, sharp and wrong, like wet grain. My stomach dropped. It wasn't cake. It was pig slop. Animal feed, the kind you buy for $10 at Tractor Supply, mashed between layers of dry sponge and slathered with frosting to hide it. Owen took a bite, gagged, and spat it out, his face crumpling. Tears spilled down his cheeks, and the room went quiet except for Diane's cackle. Mom and Dad joined in, along with Diane's 2 friends, who always trail her like shadows. The kids stared, confused. I rushed to Owen, my heart pounding, but before I could wipe the frosting off his chin, I saw Dad holding up his phone. "This is hilarious," he said, posting the video to Facebook with a caption. "Look at this crybaby." Diane waved a hand. "Oh, come on, it's just for laughs. He's fine." I scooped Owen up, his small body shaking against mine, and carried him out to the parking lot. The spring air was warm, but I felt cold, like something inside me had cracked. Nobody followed us. Not Mom, not Dad, not Diane. They stayed inside laughing while my son sobbed and my homemade cake sat untouched on the table. I wanted to scream, to march back in and throw that disgusting cake at them, but I just held Owen tighter, whispering that I loved him. All I could think was, they humiliated my child and they thought it was funny. The weeks after Owen's birthday were a blur of guilt and rage, like I was carrying a stone in my chest. I'd lie awake in our small Roseville apartment, a second-floor unit with thin walls and a balcony barely big enough for 2 chairs, listening to the hum of traffic on Douglas Boulevard. Owen's room was across the hall, stuffed with Pokemon cards and a quilt his grandma, my late mother-in-law, had made. He wasn't the same. He stopped drawing Pikachu, and when I suggested a play date, he'd cling to me, eyes wide, asking if there'd be cake. I signed him up for therapy at a clinic near Folsom Road, 4 sessions at $100 each, paid from my savings. I had about $5,000 tucked away, a safety net I'd built penny by penny, and it hurt to dip into it. But Owen needed help. The therapist, a kind woman with glasses that slid down her nose, said he was processing shame, not just from the pig slop, but from the laughter, the way his family turned his joy into a joke. I was a mess, too. At work, I'd stare at my computer, the columns of numbers blurring as I replayed that day. My cubicle at the construction firm smelled like stale coffee, and I'd taped a drawing Owen made, a wobbly Pikachu, to my monitor. I wanted to be strong for him, but some days I'd lock myself in the office bathroom, crying into my hands, furious at Diane, at my parents, at myself for not stopping it. Other times, I'd feel this strange pity for them, like they were trapped in their own petty world, and I'd wonder if I was overreacting. Then I'd see Owen flinch at the word cake, and the anger would flare back, hot and sharp. My parents didn't help. I called them a week later, hoping for an apology. We sat in their Sacramento living room, the air thick with the scent of Mom's lavender candles. Dad sprawled on the recliner, scrolling his phone, while Mom twisted her necklace and sighed. "You're making him soft, Sarah," she said. "Kids need to toughen up." Dad grunted. "It was a prank. Get over it." I left shaking, my hands clenched so tight my nails left marks. Diane was worse. She texted me a half-hearted "sorry if Owen's upset," followed by a shrugging emoji, as if it was his fault for not laughing. I didn't reply. I couldn't trust myself to stay calm. Then, about a month later, I found something that changed everything. I'd driven Diane to a spa in Sacramento a few weeks before the party. She'd begged for a ride, claiming her car was in the shop. While cleaning my Honda Civic, a beat-up sedan with a dented fender I hadn't fixed, I found a manila folder wedged under the passenger seat. Inside was a loan contract from Sacramento Credit Union, $50,000, taken out in my name. My name. The signatures were forged, scrawled in a loopy imitation of my careful cursive, and there was a fake LLC, Bennett Consulting, listed as my business. I sat in my apartment, the folder open on my kitchen table, a chipped Formica square that wobbled if you leaned too hard. My heart raced, but my mind was oddly clear. Diane had stolen my identity, used me to fund her boutique's debts or her designer bags, thinking I'd never notice. I knew she was desperate. Her boutique was failing, and she'd been dodging creditors. But this, it wasn't just greed. It was personal, like she wanted to prove she could outsmart me, the boring sister's kid who'd never measure up. I should have been scared, but I felt something else. Focus. I didn't want to scream or confront her. That's what she expected, what they all fed off, my emotions, my weakness. Instead, I drove to a notary in Roseville, a strip mall office next to a nail salon, and paid $15 to verify the signatures weren't mine. Then I took Owen with me to Sacramento Credit Union, a sleek building with glass doors and a lobby that smelled like new carpet. I brought my real ID, pay stubs, and the forged contract, my voice steady as I explained the fraud. The banker, a young guy with a tie too tight, promised I wouldn't be liable and said they'd open an investigation. Diane could face fines or even jail under California law, he said, but I barely heard him. I was already thinking bigger. She'd humiliated my son, and now she'd tried to steal my future. I wanted her to feel what Owen felt, helpless, exposed. I started digging. I called a hairstylist in Roseville who'd done Diane's highlights. Diane had stiffed her for $200, promising to pay next time. I emailed the Monk's Cellar, a local pub Diane had trashed on Yelp after they refused to comp her meal. They sent me screenshots of her rant, calling their food garbage. Then I tracked down Diane's ex, Mark, a quiet guy who'd loved her once. Over coffee at a Pete's in Sacramento, he told me how Diane had drained $10,000 from his savings before leaving him. His hands shook as he talked, and I saw the same hurt in him that I felt. I wasn't alone. Diane had left a trail of people she'd used, and I was going to make sure they all knew what she'd done to Owen. Not loudly, not yet. I'd wait, and when the moment came, I'd make it count. By summer, I'd been carrying Diane's betrayal like a bruise that wouldn't fade. My apartment felt smaller, the walls closing in with every bill I paid, $400 for Owen's therapy, $15 for the notary, the constant grind of making my $65,000 stretch. But I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was planning. I kept the forged loan documents in a locked drawer in my bedroom next to Owen's old baby shoes, a reminder of what I was fighting for. I'd catch myself staring at them, torn between wanting to forgive Diane, maybe she was just desperate, not cruel, and wanting to make her pay. The anger always won, but it wasn't loud or reckless. It was quiet, like the way I'd check Owen's homework or balance my spreadsheets at work. I was done being the sister's kid who took the hit. Diane gave me the perfect opening. She was planning an engagement party with her fiancé, James Sullivan, at the Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento. A grand old building with marble floors and chandeliers that made you feel underdressed just walking in. James came from money. His parents owned a vineyard in Napa, and Diane had spent months crafting a persona for them. The successful boutique owner, polished and poised. I knew the party cost $5,000 to book, a price I found on the museum's website when I looked it up, and James was footing the bill. Diane must have felt invincible, like she'd finally clawed her way above the rest of us. But I saw the cracks. Her boutique was bleeding cash, and that $50,000 loan in my name was her lifeline, a secret she thought I'd never find. I think she convinced herself it wasn't really stealing, not from family, not from me, the lesser one who'd never outshine her. I started with something small but sharp. I spent $20 at a stationery store in Roseville, a little shop off Main Street with creaky floors and the smell of ink, to buy a gift box and print a photo. It was a screenshot from Dad's Facebook video. Owen, his face red with tears, frosting smeared on his chin, and Diane in the background, laughing with a fork in her hand. I didn't add a note. I mailed it anonymously to the Crocker Art Museum, addressed to the engagement party. I imagined Diane opening it, her smile freezing, and I felt a pang of guilt. Maybe this was too much. Maybe I was becoming like her. But then I remembered Owen's nightmares, the way he'd stopped trusting birthday candles, and I pushed the guilt down. The real move came a week earlier. I'd learned James's parents were attending a charity auction at the Sacramento Convention Center, a black tie event for a children's hospital. Tickets were $50, a splurge I justified by skipping my usual coffee runs for a month. I wore a navy dress I'd bought on clearance at Macy's, my hands sweaty as I walked into the ballroom, all crystal glasses and murmured laughter. I found James's parents, an older couple with the kind of quiet wealth that doesn't need to announce itself. I introduced myself as Diane's niece, my voice steadier than I felt, and chatted about family. Then I handed them a flyer designed to look like a menu but listing Diane's scams. The $200 she owed the hairstylist, the Yelp rant against the Monk's Cellar, the $10,000 she'd taken from her ex, and a copy of the forged loan contract in my name, courtesy of the Better Business Bureau's public records. I'd spent $10 printing it at a FedEx in Roseville, the machine humming as I checked every word. I didn't stay to see their reaction. I drove home, my heart pounding, half expecting a call from Diane, accusing me of ruining her life. It didn't come. Not yet. But the engagement party was canceled. James broke it off, and his parents cut contact, unwilling to tie their name to Diane's mess. She called me 4 times in an hour, leaving voicemails I didn't listen to. I sat on my balcony, the evening air warm and heavy, and felt a strange mix of triumph and emptiness. I wasn't done, but I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. Justice, or just peace. Then Mom called, her voice sharp through the phone. I was in my kitchen, washing dishes, the sink full of bubbles and Owen's plastic Pokemon cups. "You've destroyed Diane's future," she said. "She had a chance with a real family, and you took it." I wanted to scream, to list every way they'd failed Owen, but I just stood there, the sponge dripping in my hand. "You laughed when my son cried," I said, my voice low. I hung up before she could answer, my hands shaking. I didn't feel powerful, just tired, like I'd been carrying their weight my whole life. The bank called Diane a few days later. I'd already met with Sacramento Credit Union, a clean, modern building with a mural of the Sacramento River on one wall. They'd confirmed I wasn't liable for the $50,000 loan and had frozen Diane's accounts, the remaining $20,000 now out of her reach. She was facing a $5,000 fine for identity theft, the banker said, standard for a first offense under California law. It wasn't jail, but it was enough to break her. Diane's boutique closed a week later, the windows papered over, and she was gone from Sacramento's social scene, a ghost of the woman who'd laughed at my son's tears. Fall came to Roseville, and the air turned crisp, carrying the scent of dry leaves and distant barbecues. My apartment felt lighter, like the weight of that spring day had finally started to lift. Owen was still healing, though. He'd stopped talking about birthdays altogether, and when I brought out cupcakes for a school event, he pushed them away, his small face tight with fear. I'd watch him sleep sometimes, curled under his Pokemon quilt, and wonder if I'd failed him, letting my family's cruelty steal his trust. But I wasn't giving up. I wanted him to know joy again, the kind that didn't come with strings or laughter at his expense. I found an unexpected ally in Carla Rossi, the owner of Bella's Bakery on Vernon Street. Diane had trashed her shop on Yelp years ago, calling it filthy, after Carla refused to remake a cake for free. I'd driven by the bakery countless times, a cozy storefront with a striped awning and a chalkboard sign advertising fresh scones. On a whim, I stopped in, the bell above the door jingling as I stepped onto the worn wooden floor. The air smelled of sugar and vanilla, and Carla, a woman in her 50s with flour-dusted hands and a warm smile, listened as I told her about Owen's party. I showed her the Facebook video. Dad had taken it down, but I'd saved a copy. Her eyes welled up, and she didn't say much, just nodded and asked for Owen's favorite Pokemon. A week later, Carla closed her shop for a day, a Saturday in October, and turned it into a Pokemon wonderland. She spent $200 on decorations, streamers, Pikachu balloons, a banner that read Owen's Pokemon Party, and baked a Pikachu cake for $75. Its yellow frosting so bright it seemed to glow. I paid for it all, dipping into my savings again, but it felt right, like I was buying back a piece of Owen's childhood. The bakery's tables were pushed against the walls, covered with checkered cloths, and a dozen of Owen's friends filled the room, their laughter echoing off the glass display cases. Owen hesitated at first, gripping my hand, but when he saw the cake, his eyes widened and a shy smile broke through. He blew out the candles, and for the first time in months, he didn't flinch. I stood in the corner, wiping tears I hoped no one saw, feeling like I'd finally done something right. Diane's life unraveled while ours came back together. She'd moved to Fresno, renting a room from a cousin and working part-time at a Walmart, earning $15 an hour. I heard about it from a mutual friend who said Diane looked tired, her sharp cheekbones more hollow than proud. The Sacramento Credit Union had fined her $5,000 for the identity theft, and her frozen accounts left her with nothing but debts. I didn't feel joy hearing it, just a quiet relief, like closing a book I never wanted to read again. I think Diane had always been chasing something: attention, status, a version of herself that didn't exist. Hurting Owen wasn't about him. It was her way of proving she was still in control, even as her world crumbled. Knowing that didn't make it hurt less, but it made it easier to let go. My parents tried to reach out. A birthday card arrived for Owen, a cheap one from CVS with a cartoon dog and $10 tucked inside. Mom's handwriting read, "We're still family." I let Owen open it, and he glanced at the money, then tore the card in half, his face blank. "Can we get pizza instead?" he asked, and I laughed, the sound surprising me. We drove to Round Table Pizza on Foothills Boulevard, a familiar spot with red booths and the hum of arcade games. A large pepperoni pizza cost $25, and we split it, Owen giggling as he tried to name every Pokemon he could think of. I watched him, my heart full, and realized this was what I'd been fighting for. Not revenge, but moments like this, where we could just be. I don't talk to my parents anymore. They call sometimes, leaving voicemails I delete without listening. I don't hate them, but I don't need them either. My apartment, with its creaky floors and mismatched furniture, is enough. My job, with its endless spreadsheets and lukewarm coffee, is enough. Owen, with his crooked smile and growing stack of Pokemon cards, is more than enough. I used to think I had to prove something, to Diane, to Mom and Dad, to myself. But sitting across from Owen, watching him steal an extra slice of pizza, I knew I didn't. We'd found our peace, and no one could take that away.